We have been lied to for centuries. Those legendary names you thought were heroes were actually victims, and those you thought were monsters were lonely souls who suffered injustice. However, the story of Perseus, Medusa, and Andromeda, one of the most famous epics of Greek mythology, is not a holy tale of heroism. It is a battle for survival written in blood and tears by three lonely souls who fell victim to the hubris of the gods. I am Emma. If you are ready for the dark truths, let's begin. The story of Perseus begins with a deadly prophecy written before he was even born. When King Acrisius of Argos hears the prophecy that he will be killed by his grandson, he imprisons his daughter Danae in an underground bronze chamber. However, Zeus seeps into Danae in the form of a golden rain, and this is how Perseus is conceived. When the king realizes the situation, he has his daughter and newborn grandson nailed inside a giant wooden chest and thrown into the merciless waters of the Aegean. In myths, heroes are generally cherished by the gods. However, despite being a demigod, Perseus began his life as a victim, waiting to drown, swallowing vomit and seawater inside a dark, airless coffin. Until that wooden chest washed ashore on the island of Seriphos, Perseus was not a hero, but merely thrown into the sea like unwanted garbage. We always know Medusa as a hideous monster from birth, but the truth is far more tragic. She was one of the most beautiful of mortal women, serving in the temple of Athena. When Poseidon, the god of the sea, forced himself upon her in the temple, Athena, unable to overpower Poseidon, took the anger of her temple's defilement out on the actual victim, Medusa. She transformed her hair into poisonous snakes and her gaze into a curse that turns people to stone. The snake-haired monsters known in mythology as the Gorgons are actually three sisters, Stheno, Uriel, and Medusa. However, it is rarely told in movies. The other two sisters are born monsters and immortal. Only Medusa is mortal. Why? Because she is a human who was cursed later on. While the others are divine monsters, Medusa is a former woman who was wronged and punished. The only reason her death could come at the hands of Perseus is this mortal human nature of hers. The story of Andromeda was turned upside down by the deadly hubris of her mother, Queen Cassiopeia. When the queen claimed that she, or her daughter, was even more beautiful than the sea nymphs, Poseidon sent the giant sea monster Cetus to destroy the country. The only way to save the country was to strip the innocent Andromeda naked and chain her to the rocks by the sea. Hollywood movies often depict Andromeda as a blonde, white-skinned Greek princess. However, in Ovid's texts and original Greek mythology, Andromeda is the daughter of the king of Ethiopia, Abyssinia/Ethiopia, meaning she is actually a black African princess. Furthermore, the sea monster Cetus that came to eat her created such a massive cultural impact that today, the Latin scientific name for the order of marine mammals, including whales and dolphins, Cetacea, comes directly from the name of this monster. These three separate tragedies intertwine in Perseus's seemingly impossible quest. When Perseus entered the cave of the Gorgons, he did not draw his sword and attack Medusa blindly. Knowing he would turn to stone if he looked directly, he used the mirror-polished bronze shield given by Athena. He averted his eyes from the monster, walked backward looking only at the reflection, and severed her head with a single blow. When Perseus struck with his sword and cut off Medusa's head, the legendary Pegasus, a pure white-winged horse, and the golden-sworded warrior Chrysaor sprang forth and were born from her blood-gushing neck. Because when Poseidon raped her in the temple years ago, Medusa had become pregnant and could not give birth to her children because she was cursed. Perseus's sword actually served as a dark maternity surgery that saved Medusa from this horrific life of imprisonment. The climax of the story happens on the way back. As Perseus is flying with his winged sandals, he sees Andromeda chained to the rocks and the giant whale monster Cetus approaching her. His sword will not pierce this colossal creature. At that moment, Perseus uses his intellect. He takes Medusa's severed head, which until seconds ago was the greatest fear of his life, out of his bag and points it at the monster. Cetus turns into a massive block of stone in seconds and sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Andromeda is set free. Now, apply this myth to your own life. Sometimes, like Perseus, you are helplessly locked in a chest. And sometimes, like Andromeda, you are chained to the sins of others. But the real danger is that Medusa in your mind that you are afraid to face, your deepest trauma. If you look at this pain without control, you will freeze in the past. To heal, you must be strategic like Perseus. You must take control by looking at your trauma through the mirror of logic and self-compassion. The injustices you suffered were not your fault, but breaking those chains is solely your responsibility. Here is the ultimate lesson. The traumas you have confronted, Medusa's head, are no longer a burden on your back, but your greatest weapon. You can only protect your dreams, Andromeda, against the crises that come your way, Cetus, with this experience. Your past, which tried to destroy you, will become the shield that turns the world to stone. Do not fear your chains. Polish your mirror and become the legend of your own destiny. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you want to continue our Greek mythology series. Stay safe